A group of delinquents, led by the imposing Ikaru with his spiky blonde hair, arrives at their spot. They are accompanied by his associates, one with a white beanie and sunglasses, and another with long blonde hair. They are shocked to find a sign posted, declaring that someone has reserved their territory for the 10th of the month. The gang stands in their usual hangout, an underpass marked with hooligans graffiti. Ikaru, looking annoyed, holds the sign that has challenged their ownership of the place. This is their sanctuary, the Brighton base, now desecrated by the audacious sign left on their couch, a clear provocation. Elsewhere, a man named Kiriki Kyuji nervously checks his phone at an outdoor cafe. It's 4:38 p.m. on October 9th. He's anxious, realizing it's almost time for a dreaded meeting. The cause of his anxiety is revealed. The unreal Sawa Ikaru has summoned him. The very thought of it is terrifying. Kyuji reflects on Ikaru's reputation. He's an incredibly dangerous man, notorious for his troubles with the police. Kyuji has spent years trying to avoid him, but that's no longer an option. Suddenly, without warning, Kyuji is startled and sent flying backward in his chair, letting out a scream of terror. Standing over him are the very people he dreaded meeting. Ikaru and his two cronies, looking down with menacing indifference as Kyuji continues to scream. Ikaru coldly asks if he is Kiriki Kyuji. Startled, Kyuji scrambles to be polite, confirming his identity with a nervous laugh and hastily offering them a seat. As Kyuji nervously gorges on fast food, Ikaru gets to the point. He's heard that Kyuji is a well-connected man, a rumor Kyuji immediately tries to downplay. Ikaru's friends are skeptical of Kyuji's act, wondering if he's really a nobody. Ikaru's friend with the beanie cuts to the chase, telling Kyuji they called him because they have a job for him. Ikaru explains the job. He's hunting a criminal and wants to use Kyuji's extensive social network to find him. Ikaru elaborates that the reserve sign was a declaration of war. Since the rival group plans to attack on the 10th, he wants Kyuji to find them beforehand so they could be wiped out. Ikaru's frustration boils over. He slams the table, furious about the sign. He points directly at Kyuji, demanding that he find the person who put up the sign by tomorrow. Losing all composure, Ikaru screams that anyone who messes with his spot is dead meat. His explosive rage sends Kyuji cowering and screaming in fear on the ground. After his outburst, Ikaru tries to catch his breath. His friends watch as Kyuji remains on the floor, whimpering in terror. Ikaru's friends help him compose himself and decide it's time to leave. As the gang departs, they tell Kyuji to contact them if he finds anything. Ikaru, looking stressed, rubs his face, the weight of the situation clear. Left alone amidst the mess, Kyuji desperately clutches the sign, his mind racing with panic. The deadline is tomorrow. The scene shifts. As evening falls, Ikaru stands outside, looking up at a residential building. He arrives at his apartment, unlocking the door and stepping into the quiet hallway. Inside, he sees a pair of women's heels next to his shoes. On a nearby counter, there's a stack of cash. He pauses, sensing the atmosphere in his home. His mother appears, telling him he's early. She explains she was too busy with work to make dinner and hands him some money to buy his own food. As his mother looks at him expectantly, Ikaru silently takes the cash, his face settling into a cold and distant mask, pointedly avoiding her gaze. She challenges him to speak his mind, but her words hit a wall of indifference. Ikaru turns his back on her, his quiet refusal. I got nothing left to say to you, serving as a final, cutting rejection that hangs heavy in the air. His mother's anger erupts. She screams at him, accusing him of being just like his father and questioning who raised him. Ikaru coldly tells her that if she doesn't like it, she can get out and live on her own. As he walks away, he thinks to himself how sick he is of the constant conflict. The scene flashes back to a desolate childhood. A young boy burns a piece of toast and is immediately berated by his mother, who calls him a bastard and accuses him of wasting the food she pays for. While forcing down the burnt toast, the boy is told to shut up by his mother, who laments her own lost dreams. The scene of his lonely meal is contrasted with a glimpse of a happy family enjoying a picnic, highlighting his profound isolation. The flashback continues, showing other children enjoying their lunches while the boy sits alone, eating cheap packaged snacks, a stark depiction of his hunger and neglect. While others admire a well-made lunch, the boy is shown eating by himself. The scene then abruptly cuts away with a disembodied question. Cook! The narrative snaps back to Ikaru in the present. A naked woman in his bed calls out his name, questioning his earlier comment. Now shirtless, Ikaru sits on the edge of the bed. The woman says she is hungry too and tells him to buy her something, but he nonchalantly replies that he can't cook and she should get a snack herself. A dark turn of events unfolds. After a moment of silence, Ikaru violently attacks the woman. He drags the screaming woman by her hair, his face a mask of cold fury. He then leaves the apartment, leaving her sobbing in pain, and walks away with a grim expression. Later, Ikaru is seen at a convenience store, ravenously eating prepackaged food he just bought. As he eats, a wave of nausea hits him, and he covers his mouth, trying to keep the food down. He fails, and is shown violently throwing up in an alleyway. Exhausted and panting, he crouches alone in the darkness. Despite having just been sick, a single thought consumes him. I'm starving. He immediately prepares a cup of instant noodles to satisfy the gnawing hunger. Ikaru stands outside the convenience store, slurping the instant noodles. As he walks, he is startled by a voice. He looks up and sees his two friends, who are surprised to run into him there. It turns out his friends were also getting a late-night meal. The long-haired one eats a rice ball, while the one with glasses slurps his own noodles. They complain about their own dysfunctional family lives, finding it ironic and amusing that they all ended up at the same spot after saying goodbye only an hour earlier. As his friends share their food, Ikaru approaches them with his own cup of noodles, and they look up at him with surprise. Seeing his friends, a genuine, happy smile spreads across Ikaru's face, a stark contrast to his earlier rage and loneliness. The three of them share a laugh. His friend in the beanie says, "I guess you guys are all I have," cementing their bond as a found family. A brief flashback shows the group's origins. They found a discarded couch on garbage day and hauled it back to their spot, creating their own clubhouse and sanctuary. Their hideout, spray-painted with the name Paradise Bad Boys, is a place Ikaru vows to defend to the death. Back at their hideout, after finishing his meal, Ikaru has crashed hard on the couch. He sleeps for a moment before suddenly waking with a jolt, looking disoriented. A moment later, all three friends are on their feet, staring forward in utter disbelief. They are rendered speechless by the shocking scene that has suddenly unfolded in their private sanctuary. The source of their shock is revealed. Their hideout has been completely taken over by a massive party. Dozens of strangers, including women and children, are crowded into their space, celebrating. Ikaru and his friends stand stunned amidst the chaos as the intruders enjoy food and drinks, completely oblivious to the fact that they are trespassing in the Brighton base. Ikaru is rendered completely speechless, sweating as he tries to process the unbelievable scene unfolding in his sanctuary. The partygoers are in high spirits, laughing and sharing drinks from a cooler, treating the gang's hideout like their own personal party venue. The scene is one of pure revelry, with groups of men laughing and drinking, further highlighting the sheer scale of the bizarre home invasion. A nervous Kariki Kyuji, the very man Ikaru had threatened, appears before the gang, looking incredibly anxious about how to explain the situation. Kyuji explains that he did exactly as Ikaru asked and lined up all the culprits. In an absurd twist, he reveals that the entire party is made up of his own family, relatives, and friends. Ikaru clenches his fist in disbelief, muttering bullshit, as Kyuji shrinks back in terror, anticipating the violent explosion he knows is coming. Ikaru snaps. With a furious roar, he delivers a brutal punch to Kyuji's face, sending him flying backward. Losing all control, Ikaru erupts in fury, screaming at Kyuji and demanding to know if this is a joke. He then turns his rage on the crowd. ordering them to get out. He goes on a rampage, kicking over food and shoving people as he screams that this is his gang spot. Ikaru lets out a primal scream of pure, unrestrained rage, completely overwhelmed by the absurd and disrespectful invasion of his territory. In a shocking turn, one of the older women from the party effortlessly grabs the rampaging Ikaru. She scolds him for being strong, but tells him not to ruin the food she lovingly prepared. The ultimate humiliation comes as an older man grabs Ikaru by the hair, easily immobilizing him. He mockingly chastises the feared gang leader for getting worked up over a little spot, ending the chapter with Ikaru utterly defeated. A man with a buzz cut laughs boisterously, pulling a nervous, sweating Kyuji into a side hug, offering him a seat. Kyuji looks startled by the sudden, close contact. From behind a chain-link fence, Kyuji, looking out of place with his delinquent style, peers at a school field day in progress. He seems confused, wondering why there are new faces he doesn't recognize. A kind, motherly woman offers Kyuji a bento box. She tells him not to worry, as having a few extra sons makes no difference to her, welcoming him into the fold. One of the men looks on with a bewildered expression at the box filled with huge rice balls. Suddenly, the man with the buzz cut cups his hand around his mouth and lets out a massive shout. The man is revealed to be a father, screaming loving encouragement for his daughter, Aya, during the field day. The girl, however, is completely mortified by her father's loud and embarrassing cheering. Watching the scene unfold, Kyuji feels secondhand embarrassment for Aya. The man beside him explains that he experienced the same thing as a kid, reflecting on the power of family love, even without blood ties. A close-up on a massive, messy bento box shows the feast they've prepared. The narration explains that this found family, a group of outcasts, has to watch from afar because they get rowdy, and a family continues to grow each year. The whole group erupts in joyous celebration, cheering and laughing together. It's a scene of pure, chaotic happiness, centered around a banner made for Aya. The raucous meal continues, with the members of this makeshift family sharing food, drinking, and arguing playfully. It's a loud, messy, but deeply connected gathering. The scene focuses on different members of the group as they eat. A young boy looks on. Someone unwraps a rice ball. Kyuji drinks a can of beer while laughing with others. And finally, a quiet, content expression is seen. A symbolic image shows the silhouettes of the cheering family overlaid on a background of large rice balls, representing the bond they share over food and companionship. The symbolic imagery continues, with a spiky-haired silhouette, likely Kyuji or Ikaru, raising a hand in victory against the backdrop of rice balls and the cheering crowd. Kyuji takes a bite of a rice ball, and a tear escapes his eye. The simple act of eating and belonging seems to overwhelm him with emotion. The members of the family are shown completely absorbed in their food, eating with immense gusto and joy, stuffing their faces without a care in the world. Standing apart from the noisy crowd, Kyuji looks on thoughtfully. The narration reflects that this family seems poised to grow again, finding warmth and connection that quenches a deep thirst for belonging. The camera pans out to a wide view of the city, showing a bridge over a river. A caption declares that in this town, a mammoth family resides. The scene shifts. Another young man asks Kyuji a hypothetical question. What would he do if a friend needed money? Kyuji considers it, but balks at the idea of giving up all his savings, yelling that there's no way he'd do it. The question becomes more profound. What if the friend was drowning in a debt so large that he could never hope to repay it? Kyuji is left speechless, contemplating the impossible situation. The two friends sit in silence on a rooftop overlooking the city, the weight of the question hanging in the air between them. A montage flashes by, illustrating a desperate need for money. A hand holding cash, a person collapsed on the street, and finally, Kyuji desperately begging a woman for money. The story introduces Isawa Ikaru, a notorious local problem child. A member of the family narrates that he used to be afraid of Ikaru, but eventually, he too joined their ever-growing family. Two other delinquents, Tomo and Fumiya, chase after someone, demanding to know what's going on and why they're being given the cold shoulder. As the group walks away down the street, the narrator's voice concludes that these are the newest members of their family, denying that there is any problem. Suddenly, their path is blocked by an intimidating man in a leather jacket, looking down from a higher vantage point. Sizing them up with a smug expression, he asks if they're the new fish. Ikaru, Tomo, and Fumiya react with startled confusion. Their assertive demeanor vanishes as they look up at this imposing figure who is clearly questioning their presence and authority. The man in the leather jacket, Tsukichi, gets hands-on with the new recruits. He ruffles their hair and grabs Ikaru's chin, inspecting them closely. The recruits stammer that they were supposed to meet someone named Kyuji. Tsukichi silences them and pulls out a lighter. With a flick, he makes a crude and shocking demand, ordering them to expose themselves as a test of loyalty before they can proceed. Having passed the bizarre test, the new recruits follow Tsukichi. He leads them towards a house, telling the confused newcomers that being part of the family means they have to work. Inside, Ikaru, Tomo, and Fumiya come face to face with a grotesque-looking person in lingerie sitting on a couch. They all scream in unison, utterly terrified by the bizarre sight. The figure, known as Annie, sizes up the terrified newcomers. As she inspects them, they realize with horror that the door has been locked behind them, trapping them inside. Auntie licks Ikaru's face, her eye wide with a crazed look as she invites them to come in one by one. The others watch in horror as Ikaru is pulled away, the door slamming shut. Fumiya hides his face in terror as the doorknob turns. Suddenly, a naked and disoriented Ikaru is thrown from the room, landing in a heap before them. The scene shifts to outside a large, imposing building. Tsukichi stands there, coolly fanning out a thick wad of cash he just received, presumably as payment for the job the recruits just did. Tsukichi approaches the three shaken and exhausted recruits. He praises their nice work and hands them their cut of the money, noting that they look like they've been worked hard. Just then, Kyuji appears with a smile, holding a large bento box. He apologizes, explaining that Tsukichi forced him to introduce them. He offers them lunch from Annie to help them regain their strength. As they eat, one of the recruits asks Kyuji if the man they just worked for was Hasegawa Tsukichi from Bluebeard. Kyuji, surprised they know the name, confirms it, and Ikaru looks on with a stuffed mouth, realizing the connection. It's explained that Bluebeard is a legendary adult entertainment business in Hiroshima, so famous that almost every man in the city has heard of them. Ikaru reflects on this revelation. He'd heard Tsukichi made easy money doing shady things and had seen him around, but he had no idea his work was so diabolical that he was connected to their family. Later, Ikaru calls Kyuji to meet him, looking serious. He tells a startled Kyuji that he needs his help with something important. Ikaru explains that now that he knows Tsukichi from Bluebeard is part of their family, he feels he has no choice but to ask for a huge favor. He takes a deep breath and desperately asks Kyuji to help him borrow 3 million yen to save a friend. Kyuji is stunned by the request. Ikaru frantically explains that 3 million yen must be nothing to a group like Bluebeard and promises he will pay them back. Kyuji sharply tells Ikaru to stop. He warns him that their family, and especially Tsukichi, is extremely fussy about lending and borrowing money. He warns that getting involved with Bluebeard's money means they'll own him for life. Kyuji emphatically states that their family has one strict rule: they don't give people loans. As he says this, Ikaru looks utterly defeated, while Tomo and Fumiya arrive, questioning what's going on. As Ikaru walks away, his friends follow, asking who this mysterious friend in trouble is. Ikaru dismisses them, asking if they really think he has any close friends besides them. With his back turned, Ikaru finally confesses. He admits he lied and that there's no friend. He was an idiot, and now the bill for all his past mistakes has come due. It's his debt. The scene flashes to a man, Kajiya, blackmailing Ikaru in a cafe. He recounts Ikaru's past misdeeds, including assaulting a girl, and reminds him how the group has had to clean up his messes time and again. Kajiya continues his threats, mentioning Ikaru's poor, single mother and her job. He warns Ikaru that if he gets in trouble with the police one more time, it could have serious consequences for his family. Leaning in, Kaguya tells Ikaru it's time to pay back everything he owes. He reveals that he needs this to get a promotion, to show his higher-ups how useful he is. Ikaru looks on in shock. Kaguya leans back, smugly stating the prize for his silence and Ikaru's freedom, 3 million yen. Down below, Tomo and Fumiya look up in shock. Ikaru's friends are horrified, realizing the man blackmailing him is Kaguya, a Yakuza. They understand that this isn't just a small-time thug anymore. Kaguya is moving up and becoming a real gangster. As Kaguya leaves the cafe, the narration explains his fearsome reputation. While Ikaru is known for being tough, Kaguya is on another level of infamy, known throughout Hiroshima as the strongest and most vicious man in town despite being only 19. The weight of this knowledge crushes the 3 new recruits. The mere mention of Kaguya's name shows how serious the situation is. Ikaru laments that this trouble has found them just as they found a new home in the family. Tomo grabs Ikaru, his frustration boiling over. He yells that they join the family. So why does the family refuse to help one of their own when they're in trouble? Tomo's anger intensifies as he confronts Ikaru. He feels the family's fancy talk about friendship and camaraderie is hypocritical when they refuse to lend a single yen to someone in actual trouble. Fumiya chimes in, agreeing with Tomo. He spits that family is just a word they use to exploit people for work. He believes they are still just outsiders. Ikaru is shaken by their angry, disillusioned words. Suddenly, a figure on a motorcycle appears, calling out to Ikaru. It's Tatsuhiro, a stylish delinquent in a camo hoodie and sunglasses. Tatsuhiro, a known problem child from a neighboring town, starts taunting Ikaru about Kaguya's promotion. The two have a fierce rivalry, and their relationship is described as being like cats and dogs, always ready to fight. As Tatsuhiro walks away, another imposing figure appears, Dano Hideki. He also mentions Kaguya's promotion, annoyed that it will make it harder to get a shot at him. Hideki confronts Ikaru and Tatsuhiro, declaring that Kaguya is his to take down. The narration reveals Hideki was nearly killed by Kaguya 2 years ago and has been in obscurity since, creating a deep-seated grudge. A close-up on Hideki reveals the depth of his hatred. Kaguya has been a thorn in Hideki's side since they were kids, a rival he has never once managed to defeat. After all these years, Hideki has become a bomb, waiting to explode in Kaguya's face. The 3 rivals, Ikaru, Tatsuhiro, and Hideki, are now face-to-face, ready to fight each other over who gets the right to challenge Kaguya. Tomo and Fumiya watch in disbelief. As the 3 prepare to brawl, a realization dawns on the onlookers. It's so obvious, but they didn't see it until now. All 3 of them want the exact same thing. Tomo steps in, shouting at the 3 rivals. He points out that they should all work together to take out Kaguya. He argues that if they teamed up, no one would stand a chance against them. Watching from above, Kyuji smirks, noting that it's a pretty smart idea. The chapter concludes with the 5 delinquents united by a common goal. Some bad boys were about to get up to some bad stuff. A bald man, Kaguya, arrives on the rooftop of a building. He looks around the empty parking lot, confused as to why no one is there to meet him. Kaguya stands alone in the empty lot, growing irritated. He mutters to himself that he was called out here just to be made to wait, complaining about the lack of manners from the kids he's supposed to meet. Meanwhile, the group of kids Kaguya is waiting for, Kyuji and his gang, are shown looking menacing and ready for a confrontation. Down below, one of Kaguya's subordinates watches the building, noting with a sigh that his boss, Kaguya, went up to the roof by himself. Inside the building's hallway, one of Kyuji's friends spots the man Kaguya came with, who is currently distracted while smoking and talking on the phone. The friend smirks, planning to take him out while he's alone. The plan goes into motion. Kyuji's friend prepares his taser. He looks on with nervous anticipation as he presses the button, before lunging and electrocuting the legs of the unsuspecting Yakuza member. With the Yakuza member stunned and falling, the attacker follows through with a powerful kick, sending him crashing to the ground. The ambush successful, Kyuji's friend dashes out of the stairwell and onto the rooftop, running towards Kaguya and his own crew to join the main fight. Suddenly, Kyuji, the leader of the delinquents, launches a surprise attack. He charges at Kaguya with furious intent, screaming for him to die, while another gang member follows closely behind. Kyuji furiously shouts that he has no money to pay them. In response, Kaguya simply scoffs and shrugs with a dismissive smirk, completely unfazed by the threat. As Kyuji swings wildly, Kaguya effortlessly grabs his arm and lands a powerful, clean punch directly to his face. The force of Kaguya's punch is immense, sending Kyuji flying backwards through the air, completely overwhelmed by the single blow. Kyuji's knife clatters to the ground as he's knocked back. Kaguya then casually picks up a toilet brush from a nearby cleaning bucket, ready to use it as a weapon. Seeing his leader fall, another of Kyuji's gang members, a man with styled black hair, rushes into attack. But Kaguya proves too skilled, dodging the attack and countering with a swift strike of his own. Kaguya lets out a yell as he follows through with a devastating punch, the impact echoing across the rooftop with a loud punk sound effect. The black-haired gang member is sent flying over the edge of the rooftop fence from the force of the blow. Below, Kaguya and his associate look on with cruel, satisfied smiles. Kaguya and his subordinate peer over the railing, looking down at the man who presumably just fell several stories to the ground below. Despite the beating he's taken, Kyuji struggles back to his feet, clutching his knife. Panting heavily, he calls Kaguya a monster and lunges forward, determined to go to hell just to take Kaguya with him. The friend who had been ambushing the Yakuza downstairs, now bleeding from a head wound, runs back into the fray, screaming wildly. He yells at his friends, frustrated about how long the fight is taking, and hurls a bottle of ink towards Kaguya's group, trying to create a distraction. Putting himself on the front line, he stands before Kaguya and screams at his friends to stand back, insisting that they should leave this fight to him. His bravery is met with a brutal whirlwind attack from one of Kaguya's men. The impact is devastating, and Kyuji and the other gang member can only watch in horror. The scene shows the aftermath of the brutal beatdown. The man with the styled black hair is on his knees, spitting up blood, utterly defeated. In the chaos of the battle, both Kyuji and another of his crew members are sent flying over the safety railing, their bodies tumbling helplessly off the side of the building as the fight reaches its brutal climax. Splattered with the blood of his enemies, Kaguya stands victorious over the fallen delinquents. He lets out a primal, triumphant scream, a sound that signifies the utter defeat of Kyuji's crew. The scene flashes back to the brutal fight, showing one of Kyuji's friends getting violently struck by a bat-wielding enemy, as his friends cry out in anger and shock. Back in the present, two of Kyuji's friends, Tatsuhiro and Hideki, are frozen in terror, sweating profusely as the realization hits them. They're completely outmatched and are going to die. Giving in to their fear, they turn and flee, screaming for their lives. As they run down the stairs, they accept the grim truth. They will never be able to defeat a monster like Kaguya. Running through the dark city streets, Tatsuhiro is lost in a spiral of despair. He doesn't want to die and can't understand what he did to deserve being trapped in this nightmare. His frantic thoughts turn to the reason for all this chaos: money and debt. But a surge of anger cuts through his fear as he remembers that it isn't even his debt. Tatsuhiro and Hideki finally stop in a hallway to catch their breath. Panting and defeated, they question why they are the ones who have to bleed and suffer for a debt that belongs to their leader, Aikiru. As they lean against the wall in exhaustion, Hideki looks at Tatsuhiro, and a desperate, unspoken question forms between them. Should they abandon their friends and just run away? The weight of their decision is crushing. They are torn between their loyalty to the gang and the instinct for self-preservation, their tormented faces reflecting their inner conflict. They stand motionless on the street as rain begins to fall, mirroring the tears of helplessness welling in their eyes. Their despair boils over into rage. Together, they scream into the night, cursing their powerlessness and the impossible situation they're trapped in. Through their anger, a new resolve is forged. Tatsuhiro declares that they need money, and it's the only way they can save their friends. Hideki agrees, adding that they have no one else to turn to for help. Tatsuhiro tells Hideki that there's only one place he can think of where they can get the money they need. After a moment of tense silence, they share a look of grim determination and head towards their destination, a quiet house in the suburbs. Tatsuhiro grips a box cutter, his face set with resolve. They walk towards a building with a sign reading Cosmos Buchiaba, evidently preparing to commit a crime. The two stand at the top of a staircase, looking down with apprehension. Tatsuhiro holds the blade tightly, the weapon feeling heavy with the weight of their desperate decision. They arrive at their target, a house with a plaque that reads Bluebeard. They stand at the entrance, take a deep breath, and nod to each other, ready to cross a line from which they can't return. Just as they are about to proceed, a voice from behind stops them. It's Kyuji, their friend. He asks if they are really so eager to lose the new home and family they found. The scene shifts to a flashback, with Kyuji narrating. He explains that the kind of people who join their found family are all cut from the same cloth. They've all had money troubles and a difficult past. Kyuji's narration continues over a scene of a construction site at night. He recalls how it used to be common for people in the family to borrow money and then simply disappear, a problem that happened more times than he can count. The flashback shows Tatsuhiro and Hideki being confronted by a tougher, older group of workers led by their boss, Ikaru. Ikaru angrily asks if they're the punks who have been causing trouble lately, while his men yell at them to get a job. Ikaru smacks Tatsuhiro on the back of the head, berating him. He asks how it took them so long to understand the consequences of their actions, questioning their loyalty as friends. Ikaru continues his lecture, telling the young kids to wake up. He explains that true friends are supposed to stop each other from making bad situations even worse, not enable them. Ikaru grabs both Tatsuhiro and Hideki, telling them they're in deep trouble for picking another fight with Kaguya. He clarifies that while the huge debt is his own responsibility, their reckless actions have made everything worse. Ikaru's crew appears in the background, holding shovels. Ikaru tells the two that while the others involved will pay for their part in due time, for now, it's their turn to face the consequences. With a menacing smile, Ikaru and his crew toss shovels at the boys, telling them to get to work. There's a debt that needs repaying, and they're going to start paying it off with their own sweat and hard labor. However, before the forced labor begins, Ikaru looms over the terrified Tatsuhiro and Hideki. He makes it clear that their physical punishment isn't over yet, announcing there's one more thing to address first. Before putting them to work, Ikaru delivers his own form of punishment, smacking Tatsuhiro hard on the back and telling him to look alive. He doesn't stop there, winding up and delivering another brutal blow to drive his point home. As the beatings continue, the scene's narration explains the group's code. Whenever someone in the family has money trouble, they all get together after their day jobs to do extra work. In the background, someone yells for the beating to stop, worried the boys will be too injured to work. Kyuji's narration finishes the thought, explaining how everyone chips in by sacrificing some of their time to help raise the needed funds. He then turns to two new members, Tomo and Fumiya, and tells them with a genuine smile that their dedication amazes him, ending the chapter on a note of camaraderie. Shukiro calmly states that if he were in their shoes, he would have agonized over it before abandoning his friend and running away. But he commends the two of them, calling them real men. The scene shows the aftermath of a chaotic brawl, with emergency crews on site. Shukiro looks on with a complicated expression, thinking to himself that this is what family is. Another young man in a helmet covers his face, clearly distressed. An envelope containing money is left on a balcony railing. A voice explains that this is honest money saved up by people who care about their friends, hoping the matter will be considered resolved. Shukiro stands before a man sitting on a leather couch, Mr. Morimoto. Mr. Morimoto scoffs at the idea of the money making up for a clan member getting stabbed, noting it's not even close to 3 million. Shukuro, however, disagrees, stating there's no such thing as honest money to an outlaw. Shukuro continues to smile, warning Mr. Morimoto that paying for one's sins is the scariest thing there is. Mr. Morimoto looks down, sweating, seemingly unnerved by his words. As Shukuro takes his leave, Mr. Morimoto dismisses the incident as a squabble between kids and tells him to get out, calling him a dick. Just as Shukuro is about to leave, Mr. Morimoto stops him, telling him it's time to stop messing around and join the clan, where he belongs. Shukuro smirks, telling Mr. Morimoto that he's jesting and has no intention of following in his old man's footsteps. Walking down the stairs, Shukuro comes across Kajiya, a man with a large tattoo on his back. They pause and eye each other warily. Shukuro remarks that Kajiya looks good for someone who just got stabbed. Kajiya scoffs and mentions that while most people are wimps, the brats who fought them put up a decent fight and are now asleep downstairs. As Kajiya walks away, Shukuro looks at his tattooed back, thinking to himself that he doesn't believe in Kajiya's family make-believe shit or honest money for a minute. A close-up reveals the skeletal design of Kajiya's back tattoo, as Shukuro's inner monologue continues, stating that he believes humans are all selfish cowards and none of the stuff Kajiya talks about really exists. Shukuro turns his head, glancing back with a knowing, cynical look. A close-up of a face shows someone seemingly agreeing with Shukuro, admitting, "You're right." But Tsukichi, with his spiky blonde hair, challenges that notion. He asks if living a lonely life, detached from any bonds, is truly the right way. Below him, his three friends look on, battered and bruised. A large Hummer pulls up, and the people inside excitedly announce that their friends at the real estate is Life Society have organized another swinging couples party, and they're all invited. The beaten-up friends protest, begging Mr. Tsukichi to let them rest. But Tsukichi is having none of it, telling them to get in the car because it's time for work, and their frightened young man act is exactly what their clients like. From the rooftop, Tsukichi laughs as he and Shukuro watch the van drive away, the boys inside screaming for mercy. On the rooftop, Tsukichi and Shukuro discuss their philosophies. Tsukichi muses that if he saw a friend in trouble, he'd probably loan them whatever money he had. He admits that he's never been in real trouble himself, so he can't be sure. But one thing is certain. He will never borrow money from a friend. Tsukichi continues, reflecting on how Ikaru, despite being in trouble until the very end, never once asked to borrow money from Fumiya or Tomo. Leaning over the railing with a grin, Tsukichi declares that he thinks Ikaru's principles are pretty cool. Shukuro listens, a cigarette dangling from his lips. The two men stand on the rooftop overlooking the city. Tsukichi quietly prays that this place, their comfortable home, will always be there for them. The scene shifts to a sizzling okonomiyaki on a grill. Inside a restaurant, the group is gathered, but their chatter is interrupted by the entrance of a large, intimidating man. The scene reveals the exterior of the establishment, a quaint restaurant named Okonomiyaki Tulip, warmly lit against the night sky, setting a deceptively peaceful stage for the coming tension. The peaceful atmosphere is broken as Kajiya, the imposing man with a shaved head and goatee, enters. His heavy presence immediately silences the room, drawing wary looks from Shukuro and the others, signaling a shift in the night's mood. Inside the restaurant, the owner greets Kajiya, asking why he walked instead of driving his beloved Celsior. Kajiya scoffs, complaining that because he's Yakuza, he can't get a parking certificate, unlike regular people. The scene transitions, showing the night sky with a sign welcoming visitors to Hiroshima. Inside, the group looks wary as Kajiya's presence shifts the atmosphere. The narration explains that decades ago, Hiroshima had a bad reputation due to Yakuza movies and countless incidents with Bosazoka gangs in the 90s. But these days, it has reinvented itself into a new city. A young man with spiky blonde hair and multiple ear-piercing smiles, introducing himself as Kiriki Kyuji. He explains that with gangsters all but eradicated, Hiroshima has become a perfect town for a pacifist like him, and that he's been part of the family since the day he was born. Kyuji clarifies that when he says family, he isn't referring to the mafia. He describes it as one big, happy family of friends where everyone supports each other, a tradition that started with his dad and his old teenage delinquent buddies and continues with younger generations. The scene shifts to Barber House number 9. Kyuji is sweeping the floor as his superior scolds him for mouthing off to a customer. The man addresses Aikaru, who is off-screen, pointing to Kyuji as an example of an infamous juvenile delinquent who has turned his life around. Kyuji mutters that it was never his intention. Kyuji explains that he was just sure a female customer would look better with short hair, but his co-worker, a man with a stylish undercut, lectures him. He tells Kyuji that everyone has different ideas, and if he's that confident in his intuition, he needs to earn the customer's trust first. Another member of the group tells the man to go easy on Kyuji, who looks stressed and admits to himself that the man is so right there's no room for debate. The man with the undercut bursts out laughing, recalling a time during his training when an old lady went berserk on him after he gave her braids. The memory makes the whole group laugh. The man encourages Kyuji, telling him it's good to have confidence and to keep up the nice work. Kyuji respectfully excuses himself, leaving Barber House number 9 for the day. The scene changes, showing other members of the family at their jobs. While Fumiya works as a bartender, Tomo is currently working at Itsukman Place, where he's being scolded for his incompetence. At another location, a young man is being berated by his boss at a bar for not memorizing all the sake brands. The narration explains that every day, the members of the family work hard at businesses owned by other family members, striving to become respectable adults. A young man joyfully runs through a plaza, thinking about how impressive rehabilitation is for former delinquents. Suddenly, he loses control of his bicycle and crashes into a crowd of people, sending them flying. He lands in a heap on the ground and immediately starts apologizing profusely to the woman he knocked over, who is also on the ground, crying out in pain. Suddenly, the woman's boyfriend, a man named Sato Tatsuhiro, appears. He angrily confronts the young man, accusing him of not only bumping into his girl, but also sneaking a peek at her panties. Tatsuhiro loses his temper and pounces on the young man, starting a brawl. A bystander watches in disbelief, remarking on how embarrassing the situation is as the two of them tumble to the ground. Another man, Dano Hideki, jumps into the fray, grabbing Tatsuhiro and yelling at him to let go. Just then, Kyuji arrives, looking exhausted from a day's work, and casually greets the rowdy group. The brawl continues as Tatsuhiro lands a solid punch on Hideki, sending him reeling backwards with a loud boom. The three men, Tatsuhiro, Hideki, and the young man who started it all, are now locked in a chaotic, messy fight. Kyuji watches the fight, commenting that years ago, Tatsuhiro's father and Hideki's father were just like this. He explains that he was just checking in on them during his work break, as another friend laughs at the recurring spectacle. As the friendly brawl continues, Kyuji explains that they all get into these good-natured fights whenever they meet. However, he adds, there's one problem, and that problem is the man called Kajiya. He stands before the brawling group, his imposing figure and stern expression immediately halting their roughhousing. The scene returns to the restaurant, where the owner asks Shukiro if he knows about Kajiya's distinctive back tattoo. Shukiro replies dismissively that he knows it's a tacky design of skeleton arms. The owner's expression turns serious as he corrects Shukiro, revealing the tragic meaning behind the tattoo. Those arms are supposed to be Kajiya's mother's. He explains that Kajiya's parents vanished when he was just a child, leaving him to grow up alone, and the older members of the group have felt a sense of responsibility for him ever since. As he continues cooking, the owner quietly reflects on Kajiya's harsh upbringing. He trails off, lost in thought, suggesting there's more to the painful story, but that Kajiya's past has undeniably shaped the cold man he is today. The scene cuts back to Kajiya, who coldly tells the others that being abandoned by one's parents doesn't exactly make someone unique within their family. Kajiya stands over Kyuji and the others, his intimidating presence casting a pall over the group. They look down, clearly exhausted and unwilling to challenge him. Kyuji and his friends try to reason with him, pleading for a break and saying they don't want to argue anymore. They argue that this sort of posturing is past because times have changed, but Kajiya's expression only hardens. Enraged, Kajiya violently shoves Kyuji aside. He screams that he doesn't give a fuck about the times and that he is who he is, refusing to change his ways. A blond young man furiously dunks another's head into a sink, screaming at him to grow up and stop trying to impress people. A man with a shaved head lectures the defeated figure, saying that while they may be misfits, they're at least trying to improve themselves by overcoming their weaknesses, unlike those who stay in their comfort zones. He passionately concludes his speech, shouting that this is the lesson that being in their family has taught him. However, his passionate words are met with scorn. A rival looks down on him with contempt and tells him not to make him laugh. The scene shows the rival gang's perspective as they boast about kicking ass every day, calling the other group dumbass for dreaming and threatening to kill them. The argument continues, with the crew members shouting that while the rival might be satisfied being a violent psychopath, they have bigger dreams. A man with tattoos on his arm clenches his teeth, his expression a mix of anger and frustration from the confrontation. The blond man, now looking terrified and overwhelmed, begs them to stop, muttering about youth and energy as he tries to deflect the intensity of the argument. The scene shifts. A man with a goatee and floral shirt, Mr. Hayashi, calls out to Kyuji, who turns around in surprise. Mr. Hayashi begins a monologue, showing images of a baby as he talks about how being part of a family makes things clear and how there are those with nowhere to go. He continues, looking at a picture of the crying baby, lamenting that while the child has the cutest voice, the movies on his phone have no sound. Mr. Hayashi shows Kyuji an old flip phone with a video of the baby. He explains it was a gift from his wife before they broke up, and he's too scared to mess with it for fear of deleting the precious memory. Kyuji looks on with a worried expression as Mr. Hayashi snaps the phone shut, laughing bitterly that the phone is a piece of junk, just like him. Later, at a coffee shop, Kyuji asks Mr. Hayashi what he wanted to talk about. Kyuji notes internally that Hayashi looks worse every time he sees him. The reason for the meeting becomes clear. Kyuji explains that the family doesn't do loans. Hayashi, looking dejected, reveals he's been looking for a job. Hayashi sinks into despair, spreading his hands and calling himself a wreck that no one would hire. Kyuji looks shocked, telling him not to say that. Hayashi continues his sorrowful confession, saying he's of no use to anyone, has no real friends, and that nobody in the family needs him. Kyuji looks at his friend with deep concern, calling his name softly and telling him that he does have one person who cares. A glimmer of hope appears in Hayashi's eyes as he smiles, touched. He tells Kyuji that he is the only one willing to give a broken mess like him the time of day. Hayashi gently touches Kyuji's face, reminiscing about how Kyuji has always pitied and talked to him, even since he was a kid. He mentions that Kyuji even got similar piercings because he admired him. Overcome with emotion, Hayashi bows his head and begins to sniffle, saying how happy Kyuji's kindness made him. Kyuji looks on, unsure how to react. Despite the emotional moment, Kyuji has to deliver the hard truth. He tells Hayashi that this doesn't change the fact that he can't get a loan, as everyone is busy with their own problems. Kyuji elaborates, revealing that Hayashi has already borrowed money from many people in the family without paying any of it back. He says they aren't giving him any more money, and this is the real reason. Just as the heavy conversation hangs in the air, a new figure, Tsukichi, appears behind them. His stern gaze is fixed on Hayashi, who begins to sweat, sensing the sudden tension. Tsukichi breaks the silence, his voice laced with anger. He points out that Kyuji is the kindest person in their family and furiously asks how Hayashi dares to put him in this kind of position. The confrontation escalates violently as Tsukichi kicks the table over, sending everything crashing to the floor. He screams at Hayashi, questioning if he has any shame for begging a kid for help. Sprawled on the floor and covered in spilled drinks, Hayashi glares back with furious, tear-filled eyes, shouting, "What would you know?" Kyuji, looking distressed, yells at Tsukichi to leave Mr. Hayashi alone, while Tsukichi coldly tells him to stay out of it. The scene cuts to a flashback of a young boy's memory. His mother is getting ready to go out, while a children's show plays on the TV about a hero named the Star Chop. The mother dismisses her child, telling him she's busy and to figure out his own food. She hurries to leave as someone off-screen calls for her impatiently. The mother walks out, leaving the young boy alone in the room, with only the glow of the television for company. The scene shifts to a bald man with a crescent-like smile, standing under the full moon. He wears a distinct flower-patterned shirt and a heavy chain. This same man walks down a dark alleyway, humming the theme song from the Star Chop show, connecting him to the boy from the flashback. In another scene, Mr. Hayashi stands outside the gates of a kindergarten, breathing on the cold metal as he peers inside. His face is filled with longing as he watches the children inside, his gaze fixing on one happy boy who is likely his son. A teacher spots him and immediately confronts him, angrily reminding him that he knows the rules and isn't supposed to be there. Hayashi panics, apologizing profusely and claiming he just wanted a quick peek. The teacher looks at him with contempt and calls him the worst. Defeated, Hayashi hides behind a telephone pole, watching sadly as the teacher and the child he came to see walk away. As Hayashi walks away dejectedly, the scene cuts back to the bald man, who looks up at the sky and wonders to himself, "What should I do?" The perspective shifts to Kyuji's inner thoughts. He feels completely lost, believing he is nothing, no place to go back to, and nothing to hold on to. His despair deepens as he clenches his fist, the word family echoing in his mind after the painful conflict he just witnessed. His eyes widen in a moment of terrifying realization, questioning the very meaning of the family he thought he had found. The mood shatters as police sirens begin to wail. Kyuji, with a grim expression, walks away from the scene of the earlier confrontation. Panic spreads as various members of the group are shown reacting with shock and anger. Tsukichi is on the phone, his face tense with worry. The reason for the panic is revealed. A building is engulfed in flames, the target of an apparent arson attack. Tsukichi sits stunned on a bench, staring in horror at the burning building, which is identified as the Bluebeard Barber Shop. A rapid series of phone calls confirms the worst. It's a coordinated attack. Multiple locations tied to the family are on fire, and Tsukichi listens with growing dread. The group gathers in the street, reacting to the devastating news. Tsukichi yells into his phone, asking for confirmation about Hayashi's status as Kyuji listens in shock. Amidst the wailing sirens, the scene cuts to a dark alley where a lone figure waits in the shadows. The man, Kajiya, steps out from the shadows, blocking the path of the distraught Hayashi. As their paths converge, a fateful conversation is about to begin. In the alley, Kajiya speaks to Hayashi, agreeing with a sentiment Hayashi had apparently expressed before. "Kajiya, you were right." Hayashi says those bonds the family keeps going on about. "It's all bullshit." Hayashi looks up at Kajiya, his expression grim. He replies that for people like them, who have strayed from the path, there is nowhere to go back to. With that, Hayashi turns and walks away down the dark, empty street, his voice echoing his complete sense of hopelessness. Nowhere at all. The chapter ends with a wide shot of the city, overwhelmed by the sound of sirens. An urgent voice cuts through the noise, shouting a command that hangs in the air, "Find Hayashi." Inside a shop, a man in an apron urgently speaks on the phone. He orders his men to keep an eye on all their businesses and homes, and to start a search for a man who he fears might not be done causing trouble. The hunt begins. Across the city, groups of men mobilize, their target clearly stated. They are after Hayashi Takashi. Silhouetted against the bright lights of the metropolis, the men spread out, a clear sign that this is a city-wide manhunt. The chase spills onto the roads. A van and several cars are in hot pursuit, with the order given to not let their target get away. The distinct sound of police sirens fills the air, indicating the chaos has now attracted the attention of law enforcement. Elsewhere, a man with glasses recalls his last encounter with Hayashi. He explains that Hayashi came to him for money about a year ago, and after getting pissed off, he slapped him around. He adds that Hayashi still owes him money, which is why he's been looking for him too. The frantic chase continues through the city as cars weave through traffic, a sign of the escalating conflict. At the Owadamo household, the matriarch, Tsukiko, panics. She rushes to her husband, Kakoi, telling him that several family businesses have caught fire all at once and that it's suspected to be arson. Her husband, Owadamo Kakoi, barely reacts. He continues to drink, casually dismissing the disaster as just some friendly ribbing among family, much to his wife's disbelief. Completely unfazed, the family patriarch Kakoi laughs heartily, suggesting they should all get together for a barbecue at the beach during the next holiday. Tsukiko stares in absolute shock, infuriated that her husband hasn't heard a single word of the dire news she just delivered. Meanwhile, in front of Barber House Number 9, a group of men stands grimly, their leader in the center looking particularly incensed. The leader assesses the situation, noting that while his own place can reopen, his comrades Taiji and Ryasuk weren't so lucky. In the background, police investigate one of the burned-down stores as its owner weeps. Mr. Taiji and Mr. Ryasuk are devastated, crying over the loss of the stores they put so much time and money into. Their loyal crew gathers around them, vowing to help them get back on their feet, declaring that this is what family is all about. Moved by their leader's tears, the crew members' faces fill with fierce determination. They shout that if they work together, they can come back even stronger than before. One of the men, overwhelmed with emotion, tells his bosses they're such nice guys and that, of course, the crew is there for them. Hearing the display of loyalty and seeing the devastation, the leader of Barber House Number 9 is overcome with rage, letting out a furious scream. He angrily declares that hardworking people don't deserve this kind of suffering. These places weren't just businesses, they were homes for people like them. He concludes with a vow. The person responsible has to pay. His face contorted with fury, he screams the name of the man he holds responsible for the destruction. "You'll fucking pay for this, Hayashi." Fueled by the collective anger, a hot-headed member named Ikaru screams that he's going to find and kill Hayashi. In the foreground, a bald, high-ranking member watches his men, quietly contemplating the next move. The scene shifts to an okonomiyaki shop. Its owner stands outside, taking a moment for himself after closing up. His phone buzzes. He looks down to see he has received a text message from none other than Hayashi Takashi. The message is simple. "Can you come to the park for a minute?" The shop owner pauses, considering the strange request. He takes the bait and heads out, leaving his shop empty. As he walks away, the shadowy figure who had been waiting by a nearby vending machine makes his move. The man slips inside the restaurant. It is none other than Mr. Hayashi, and he's holding a canister of gasoline. The text was a deceptive lure, and this shop is his next target. Inside the empty restaurant, Mr. Hayashi unscrews the cap of the gasoline can and begins to pour the flammable liquid everywhere. This isn't his first stop. A flashback shows him previously dousing the Pachinko Slot King parlor, another target in his wave of arson. The scene flashes back further, showing a desperate Mr. Hayashi gambling at that same Pachinko parlor. A younger associate tries to persuade him to go home, reminding him that his wife must be worried. But Hayashi couldn't go home. He felt like a complete loser with nothing left, lamenting to himself that he had just been fired from his job. Driven by desperation, he decided he couldn't return to his family empty-handed. He finds an office in a desolate building and begins to pick the lock, determined to find some money. He frantically ransacks the office, pulling out drawers and throwing things to the floor. But his desperation turns to fear as he considers the shame of facing his family. His search is fruitless. Sweating and panicked, he realizes there isn't a single thing worth stealing in the entire office. He collapses in frustration. Defeated, Hayashi sits alone in an alley and starts drinking heavily, wallowing in self-pity and wondering why nothing in his life ever seems to go his way. In his drunken despair, he reaches into his pocket and pulls out his old flip phone, looking for something to give him the strength to carry on. He opens the phone, and a picture of his young, innocent son appears on the screen. Looking at the image, Hayashi manages a sad smile, as if telling his son he knows what he's thinking. The weight of his failure crashes down on him. He collapses, whispering to the picture that Daddy is a loser and that his son would be better off without him. The story snaps back to the present. The sound of splashing echoes as Hayashi continues to pour gasoline all over the okonomiyaki restaurant. As he recklessly douses the shop, his precious flip phone, his only connection to his son, slips from his clothes and falls into a puddle of gasoline. After wiping down a counter, he realizes his phone is missing. He looks down and sees it lying in the gasoline, and a wave of panic washes over him. He desperately tries to get the phone to work, wiping it and pressing buttons, but it's soaked. The culmination of all his failures explodes in a moment of pure rage as he screams about how terrible his life is. Miraculously, the screen flickers to life, displaying the photo of his son. In his despair, Hayashi imagines his son's voice asking, "Is Daddy coming home?" Hayashi stares at the screen, his eyes wide with disbelief and heartache. The image of his child pierces through his anger. He's overwhelmed by a hallucination of his son's face, hearing his innocent voice pleading, "Come home soon, Daddy." Standing in the ruins of his own making, Hayashi is lost in a memory, hearing his son's cheerful encouragement and promises to play when he gets home. It seems the phone has started playing a saved voicemail or video. He hears his own voice talking to his crying child, asking what he wants to say. Through sniffles, the child's voice on the recording makes a simple, heartbreaking request for his daddy to please come home after work. That simple plea, "Come home," finally breaks him. Tears stream down Hayashi's face as the weight of what he's lost and what he's become hits him all at once. Hayashi collapses, sobbing uncontrollably. Just then, two figures appear in the doorway. It's the leader of Barber House Number 9 and one of his men. They've found him. Completely broken, Hayashi can only weep, clutching the phone with the image of his son, unaware that the men who were hunting him have just found him. The bald leader of the family steps forward, revealing an intricate floral tattoo across his chest. He looks down at the sobbing man on the floor, his expression not of anger, but of quiet observation. The bald leader crouches down in front of the broken man, the gasoline sitting between them. Instead of anger, his voice is calm as he looks at the sobbing Hayashi and says, "Hayashi, it's time for a change." The leader thinks of his own life, of the woman and child he uses as a crutch to get by. He understands Hayashi's pain, admitting that he will probably always lean on someone else. But he knows that, at the end of the day, a man has to be able to stand on his own 2 feet. A bald man with a prominent scar and tattoos covering his shoulder reflects on the nature of hope. He admits that even when things seem hopeless, there are still people who believe. He smiles, a sly and knowing look in his eyes, suggesting that they are not as alone as they might think. The scene shifts to 2 men standing at an entrance in Hiroshima. One has long, slick-back blonde hair, and the other has a shorter, styled cut, both with confident smirks on their faces. The narrator explains that in Hiroshima, a mammoth family exists, a community of people who live side by side, supporting one another. The scene changes to a lively outdoor barbecue. A man named Tsukasa arrives and is greeted warmly by the large group, who ask what took him so long. He helps another man, Hyuji, carry a cooler. One of the men at the party gets angry, questioning if Tsukasa knows what kind of people he deals with. Meanwhile, another man laughs hysterically, revealing that a man named Tsukichi had insured his place just in case of trouble. The group discusses how Tsukichi, despite being a pain, gave his extra insurance payout to help other damaged businesses. The recipients gratefully thank him, promising to work hard to pay him back. Tsukasa and his friend discuss the situation, wondering if it truly counts as a loan and commenting on the strange nature of a man named Mr. Hayashi. Knowing the family's nature, one man predicts that if the person in question does anything to make his wife and child cry, he'll be invited back in. The whole group passionately agrees, vowing to kick his ass again if necessary. While others get excited about wrestling for the first chance to deliver a beating, the former gang leader Dano Hidenori is spotted sitting alone, looking somber. Someone smacks him on the back, asking why he's sitting there by himself. An older man, bottle in hand, drapes his arm over Dano's shoulders, laughing and telling the gloomy Gus to have a drink with him. A woman tells her husband, Ikaru, to leave the poor boy alone. Dano looks up, confused. The woman then approaches him and gently touches a cut on his eyebrow, observing that it's turned into a kippo. She apologizes with a laugh, explaining that her husband can be a bit of a caveman when showing affection. She then tells Dano that despite the scar, he looks good. The woman tells Dano he's totally different from when they first met, suspecting he thinks about that day every time he looks in the mirror. A small panel shows a memory of Dano getting violently beaten. As the woman playfully runs off, Dano is left alone on the bench, contemplating her words. That's what a kippo is for. Dano looks down, a bead of sweat on his face as he processes the thought. He stands up and scratches his head, still lost in contemplation. The scene shifts to a beautiful view of the Hiroshima coastline. The narration explains that kippo is what they call small scars in Hiroshima. A flashback begins, showing a tense confrontation. An enraged Kiriki Tsukasa, the 8th-generation head of Gokurakuchu, screams at a calm and reclining Dano Hidenori, the 8th-generation head of Beast, daring the half-pint to see what he can do. Dano simply turns away with a humph as others try to hold Tsukasa back. The onlookers realize with dread that Beast and Gokurakuchu are about to go to war. The scene explodes into violence. In the middle of a chaotic brawl, Dano dodges a bat-wielding attacker and counters with a powerful strike of his own. The fight becomes even more chaotic as Hiro, the 4th-generation head of Hiroshima Knights, enters the fray, swinging a bat. Dano is shocked to see him, while Hiro screams in a rage, realizing Dano was the one responsible for a previous attack. The brawl becomes an all-out war between Hiroshima's top gangs. The narration adds a poignant note. These dyed-in-the-wool bad boys are now all dads on the wrong side of 40. The scene transitions to the present, showing the exterior of a barbershop named Barber House No. 9. Inside, someone is looking through a magazine of hairstyles. Inside, a man with wild, curly blonde hair laughs maniacally. He complains that having tried every haircut imaginable, he's unsure what to do, joking that it's a tough decision when everything looks good on him. The barber, Miyamoto Kanjuro, along with his colleague Ikaru, suggests he stick with his current style since he looks great regardless. The man, however, dismisses their opinion, playfully teasing them for being just kids. The man with the wild hair is revealed to be Hiro, the former leader of the Hiroshima Knights, one of the 3 major gangs. The narrator describes him as an unbelievable womanizer and a great fighter, the very picture of an outlaw, but also a person they just can't deal with. Hiro asks a young man for his opinion. The boy, Kiriki Kyuji, introduces himself as the navigator and suggests leaving the haircut choice to the master. It's revealed he is Hiro's son, much to his embarrassment. The barber, Nikitago, is overwhelmed, sweating as he tells Hiro he's in his hands now. He then pinches Kyuji's cheek, calling him a good kid and saying it's a miracle he's nothing like his shitty retard of a dad. Hiro leaves in a small truck, laughing manically and yelling for Nikaido to give him a haircut worthy of the greatest man in the galaxy. Nikaido can only watch, sweating and thinking he can't be serious. A man makes a call to his wife, Kumi, telling her he's ahead of schedule and will get a quick haircut. After hanging up, he enters the barbershop, where he's greeted with a surprised "oh." The young man from before, Kyuji, is surprised to see his dad, Kiriki Tsukasa, walk in. Tsukasa greets his son, equally surprised to see him there. Nikaido comments that Tsukasa is finally getting rid of his red hair. He then reveals that Tsukasa was once the head of Gokurakuchu, another of the three major gangs. Kyuji smiles, saying that despite being biased, it's hard to believe a nice guy like his dad was ever a delinquent. Suddenly, Hiro storms back into the shop, demanding to know what Tsukasa is doing there. Tsukasa looks annoyed, retorting, "Look what the cat dragged in." The barbers realize this is bad news, as the two archenemies are now in the same room. One asks Tsukasa if he wants the usual. The barbers whisper to each other, deciding to get him out as quickly as possible. As if things weren't tense enough, the bell chimes again, and in walks a formidable-looking man in a polo shirt. The entire shop stares in shocked silence. With a confident smirk, the newcomer is introduced as Mr. Dano, the former head of Beast, once the largest and strongest gang in Hiroshima. He mentions he had a day off and came for a haircut. It's also revealed that he is Hideki's father. The narrator notes that having these three men, the former heads of the three biggest rival gangs, all show up at the exact same time is a perfect recipe for disaster. The three former gang leaders sit in a tense, awkward silence, each waiting for their turn in the barber's chair. Dano acknowledges Tsukasa and Hiro with a simple "Oh, I didn't see you there." Nikaido, the barber, breaks the tension by fawning over Dano, welcoming him enthusiastically and asking what he can do for him. Hiro explodes with rage, yelling at Nikaido to stop. He complains loudly, asking why Dano is the only one who gets a magazine when he was there first. The other barbers and the sons of the gang leaders look on with grim faces. Both Hiro and Tsukasa's son shout in disbelief at the blatant favoritism. The scene flashes back, explaining why the shop is called Barber House Number 9. The 9 refers to the 9th generation of the gang Beast, which the owner, Nikaido, was once a member of. A flashback reveals that Nikaido joined the esteemed 9th generation of Beast because he worshipped Mr. Dano. Meanwhile, the other barber, Miyamoto, looked up to the 9th generation and ended up becoming a member of the 10th. In the eyes of everyone who followed in his footsteps, Mr. Dano, who stood at the head of Beast at the height of its power, is seen as a god. Back in the present, Hiro is screaming, furious that the barbers are letting personal feelings and hero worship interfere with customer service. He yells that their behavior is gross and unprofessional. Dano coolly looks over, remarking that it's pathetic for them to be making such a fuss over something so insignificant. This comment makes Hiro's eyes pop with rage. Tsukasa joins the shouting match, complaining that he took time out of his busy schedule for this, while his son begs him to calm down. Dano dismissively says it's not his problem, and they should have come on their day off. Hiro can't believe Dano's audacity, and even his son stifles a laugh. Dano takes charge, assigning barbers to his rivals with insulting nicknames. He tells Miyamoto to take care of the galaxy's greatest Skeletor, Hiro, and Ikaru to work on the boozehound butterfly butthead, Tsukasa. Hiro and Tsukasa are incensed, with Hiro yelling for Dano to step outside. Both Hiro and Tsukasa are left sputtering in rage, shocked at the ridiculous and insulting nicknames Dano has just given them. The argument escalates as both men refuse to be serviced by who they perceive as a rookie barber. Hiro whines about having to make do with Miyamoto, while Tsukasa yells that he won't put up with getting his hair cut by a rookie. Nikaido tries to placate the furious customers, suggesting a plan. He decides they will wash Hiro's hair first, since it will take the longest. While Miyamoto prepares to color Mr. Dano's hair, Nikaido himself will cut Mr. Tsukasa's hair to get out of the way. Inside a barbershop, a man with his back turned finds himself in a tight spot. He's being aggressively confronted by two other men. One, with wild curly hair, is incensed, yelling about someone named Ikaru. The man, sweating, realizes he's in deep trouble. A new figure, Dano Hidenori, steps into the tense atmosphere. With a calm and confident smile, the former gang leader defuses the situation, casually telling the agitated men that they can go first. Dano takes a seat on a leather sofa, crossing his arms. He leans back with a smug, self-assured expression, his presence alone dominating the room. The scene shows a stylized lineup of delinquent-looking characters, representing the type of unruly people that frequent the establishment or perhaps a memory of the gangs from the past. The two aggressive men are shown being metaphorically blown away by an unseen pressure. Below, two onlookers comment in awe, realizing that the source of this overwhelming aura, Dano, is on a completely different level. The two onlookers, still impressed by Dano's silent display of power, express their admiration. To them, Mr. Dano is simply the coolest. Meanwhile, the two men who had been causing the ruckus are shown with comically distorted faces, completely overwhelmed by a crushing sense of defeat. Dano looks on as two other men laugh, amused by the situation. He internally questions why his calm demeanor is perceived as cool, while their own aggressive nature is seen as lame in today's world. The scene flashes back to the past, a time when they were all young, trying to be strong and create legends. Fights were all it took to get noticed, and the girls loved them for it. The curly-haired man, Hiro, grows increasingly angry. He rants about how stifling the modern age is, where men have become weak and heroes are branded as savages. He laments that back in his day, men could be real men. Hiro's rant turns personal as he glares at the relaxed Dano. He accuses Dano of selling out, hiding his true, savage nature to be liked by women and children, reminding him that he was once an uber-delinquent. With a wicked, determined grin spreading across his face, Hiro declares that so be it. He's going to expose Dano's true character for everyone to see. Making his move, Hiro grabs Dano by the shoulder, shouting his name and initiating a direct, physical confrontation. In a shadowy silhouette, Hiro confronts Dano about his new physique, questioning his six-pack. The panel then cuts to a close-up of Dano's backside as Hiro pulls at his pants. With a malicious smile, Hiro loudly speculates if Dano has some side action going on. Dano's companions are shocked by the accusation, while Dano himself looks on, confused. Hiro's accusations spiral into madness. He yells that Dano is a fool, claiming he has 5 children and is a mass shooter armed with a baby gravy bazooka. Dano is left utterly stunned by the bizarre outburst. Hiro pokes Dano aggressively, calling him a sex gorilla and claiming he can see through his act of hiding his beastly instincts to be popular with women. Dano's friends watch, thinking the situation is just stupid and ridiculous. Hiro's face contorts into a mask of pure mania. He laughs hysterically, threatening to find whoever Dano is sleeping with and tell his wife, Kaori, wondering how she will react. Boasting that he has girls all across the country, Hiro's bravado suddenly shatters. A woman stands in the background as he breaks down, his face dissolving into tears. The confrontation ends with Hiro on the ground, crying and apologizing to his wife, Eri. Kiriki Tsukasa thanks her for coming, as she waves goodbye, leaving her husband to his shame. Later, the scene has calmed down. Kiriki Tsukasa sits in the barber's chair, getting his hair trimmed. He looks annoyed, muttering ugh, just a ugh under his breath. In his mind, Tsukasa complains about the vulgarity of the others. He sees himself as coming from a distinguished family, and can't stand being lumped together with what he calls the galaxy's scummiest Skeletor and the baby gravy bazooka gorilla. Dano overhears Tsukasa's muttering and tells him to pump the brakes. He snaps, revealing he has 5 kids with his wife and has never stopped loving her. Tsukasa is taken aback, shocked that Dano's family loyalty puts him above him. With a look of intense determination, Tsukasa declares that there's no comparison. He argues that he would never allow his own beloved Kumi to get lonely, implying he's a better husband. This strikes a nerve. Dano's face contorts in fury as he defends his work ethic, yelling back that being away from home is an unavoidable part of his job as a long-haul trucker. The argument escalates. Dano fires back, boasting that he travels from Kanto to Kyushu like a real man, while Tsukasa is just an annoying mosquito buzzing around the neighborhood. The others look on in shock as the 2 former gang leaders face off. Tsukasa snaps, telling Dano to stop acting like he's king. He furiously claims the muscles he has from carrying liquor all day are not to be underestimated. Defeated, Dano simply sighs, "Fine by me." Dano turns away in frustration. Nakedu, the shop owner, tries to restrain a furious Tsukasa, while from outside the shop, a voice pleads for the two to calm down. Suddenly, the verbal sparring turns into a full-blown brawl. Hiro, who had been watching, viciously strikes Dano with a baseball bat, sending them all tumbling to the ground in a chaotic heap. The fight continues to rage. Dano, in pain, strikes back at Hiro, yelling, "When'd you get back here, Skeletor?" as the man who started it all goes down. The three men, Dano, Tsukasa, and Hiro, are united in their agony. They scream in pain, comically lamenting that their horoscopes had promised them a great day, not this. As the dust settles, the narrator reflects that between these three, things are pretty much the same as they've always been. The men and their friends look on in horror at the wrecked barbershop, a testament to their unchanged nature. However, if there's one thing that has changed, it's the consequences. The scene shifts to Tsukasa at his liquor store, back as Hiroshima, wiping away a tear after the exhausting day. As he's stocking shelves, Tsukasa loses his footing and slams his face into a wall of beer cases. His wife, Kumi, simply says, "Oh dear," witnessing her husband's clumsy accident. With bandages on his face, Tsukasa tries to complain, but Kumi cuts him off. She tells him with a knowing smile that this is what he gets for fighting at his age. Elsewhere, Hiro returns home on a scooter. A thought crosses his mind about how physical strength plummets after 40, killing any chance to look cool. In the background, Kumi gives Tsukasa a massage, a small moment of tenderness after the fight. At Hiro's home, his son, Tatsuhiro, finds him washing something with his hair styled into a bizarre point. "Dad, what's with the hair?" he asks, confused. Hiro proudly claims he got a haircut and that it has a galaxy's greatest feel. Hiro's wife, Erika, appears and tells him to get a move on. As punishment for the day's events, she's ordered him to wash the car, weed the garden, and clean the windows. She tells their son not to help, as his dad is being punished. That night, the three former delinquents, Dano, Tsukasa, and Hiro, all have the same dream. A dream of a future where they are old, but their rivalry continues in a nursing home. In their shared dream, the three are old men, racing each other on mobility scooters, still bickering and challenging each other just as they did in their youth. The three men are shown sweating and groaning in their beds, trapped in a nightmare of their future selves. Kumi wakes up, concerned, and asks her husband, Tsukasa, if he's okay. The scene ends on Dano's truck parked for the night. The narrator calls it the middle-aged ex-delinquent blues. For a while, the nightmare would make them behave, but for Dano, this was only a taste of the storm to come.